inevitably. Pearl, you're live too. Let's see if she settles down a little bit while we give it a second. All right. Are you going to come down here and join me? All right. Well, another sunny day here has inspired me to go live. And yeah, I'm so grateful for blue skies again outside my window. And I woke up thinking this morning about a question that somebody asked me a while ago, and I told them that I would blog about it, but that hasn't happened yet, so maybe the blog is going to come later. But for now, yeah, I thought I'd just do a live about it. She asked me why I talk about communities of practice a lot. And I loved that question because, you know, I forget that not everybody has experience and good experiences with communities of practice. So at this point, it's such a part of my life. It's so, I've been transformed by communities of practice so much that sometimes I forget about that. I forget about how imperative they are for my system. And she also wanted to know why my matrix integration explorations really center on communities of practice. Why communities of practice are so important for these explorations, because they really are they're kind of what makes the matrix integration exploration really unique. Is that we create a consciously formed community with a very sacred container. So, you know, there's a lot that could be said about this, but for me in general, I'll just kind of name my patternings. My patternings are not that different than anybody else's. I've got just like 8 billion people on the planet. We all, in some way or another, have a fear of intimacy and a desire for intimacy and a fear of rejection, right? So, and this is for understandable reasons. I would say maybe everyone that I've ever met, to be honest, has had dynamics in their life where the adult people in charge were harmful in some way, or absent in some way, or were not providing what I'll just say for me, my heart needed, my heart and mind and my body really needed. And so not getting what I really needed, I started to develop a very individualistic way of being, where I had to be in charge and kind of be in charge and do it all, right? So very individualistic. This melds really well with a dominant oppressive narrative culture that we're in. Our culture also really supports and encourages this individualism, this fierce individualism, by the bootstraps mentality. So it's not a surprise that I had that in my life. Even having had that, though, there's still, of course, a part of my humanity that is craving connection, right? So what a paradigm, right? What a paradox to be afraid of connection and desiring and longing for connection, right? This is like the human dilemma right here in a nutshell on some level. So for me, communities of practice, what they provide when they're done well, because before I go into that, let's just say that I was in a community of practice for 10 years that really lacked integrity, that lacked solid rules of engagement and integrity practices. And so there was a hierarchy of power and a misuse of power. And that was not a community of practice that helped my nervous system and my brain regulate and become human, a human in an empowering way. That 10 years had lots of juicy yum for me and helped me develop a really strong internal connection with my energetic system. But it was not a practice or a time in my life that helped my nervous system learn that other humans were safe. So fast forward into my current life, what communities of practice have done for me. We get to witness Pearl having a bath. Has it's actually communicated to my nervous system that I am not alone on this planet in any way, and not, but really tangibly, what that means is that there are other human beings that I am in relationship that are that I don't have to be afraid of human beings, right? And I know it kind of sounds silly to say in a way, but when we slow down and we really connect to our patterning and the way that we protect and guard and live, we're like 8 billion people running around afraid of each other, right? And that makes it for a really hard way to live as humans, to live with a closed energetic system and a nervous system that's on guard. That makes it really hard to live in well-beingness, right? And so for me, living with communities of practice was a very tangible way that I could, oh my goodness, that my nervous system could learn firsthand that I was safe to be me. I think that's like the gist of it. Like I learned I was really safe to be me. I could be distraught. I could be happy. I could be confused. I could be, sad and grieving. I could be angry. I could be clear, and I could be really chaotic. And the people that in my environment, in my communities of practice, were not going to leave me, even if I was not the me that I wanted to be, right? So we often have these idealized, fantastical versions of who we want ourselves to be, and then we measure everything according to that. And then of course, we constantly we fail, right? Because we can't live up to a fantasy. So it kind of keeps that fantasy or that trauma cycle going in a way of fear of abandonment, fear of intimacy, and a desire for intimacy, and like that just keeps the discernment going. So communities of practice, when we have them with consciously created containers, we start to be able to experiment in being our real self, our real self, our real self with fears, our real selves with desires, our real selves that have anxiety and nervousness. And all of a sudden, we are being real, and nobody is making us bad and wrong because of it. And that piece just itself is pretty profound for most of us. Most of us have lived in relationships where we had to just be a certain way, or those people were not going to be staying around, right? So that continues to traumatize our nervous system and dysregulate our brains, really. So as we are in communities of practice, we get to be real, others get to be real, and all of a sudden we start to learn that we are human beings together on a journey, not of perfection. This is not a perfecting planet, this is a learning planet. So we start to learn that we're learning together, right? And what that does for our nervous system is really interesting. It starts to unwind a vigilance. It starts to teach a nervous system that we're really safe to be here, in our bodies, on the planet, with other human beings. And that is a rare gift, often, to actually experience. And then when we stay in those communities of practice long enough, and our neural pathways literally will start to rewire. Because now our nervous systems know that the world isn't scary, knows that people aren't scary, knows that we can build resilience and agency and resourcefulness in ourselves and connect from that place. So again, it's important to kind of keep taking that half step back to acknowledge that the way that the community of practice is set up is essential. We do need to have agreements. We do need to have practices that keep us in alignment, that keep our community members community members will practice in alignment, in integrity, doing, staying aligned with the work that we are committed to doing. And those practices themselves will keep us in integrity. That way, nobody has to be dominating or domineering that community of practice. It can be really a co-creation of interdependence as opposed to some authority figure telling us what to do and punishing us when we don't do it, right? So instead of that kind of thought technology, we're actually embracing a community of we-ness, of interdependency, of collaboration, of creativity, of connection, of support, of calling in when needed, of lifting up when needed, and so forth and so on. So the communities of practice that I'm involved in are many. They look a little differently depending on context, but they all have those rules of engagement, those agreements at the core of them. So the agreements keep us in integrity, and so that's what really, for me, sets this matrix integration exploration a little bit apart from other things. Is that not only is there one-to-one work to connect to what keeps us from intimacy and what keeps us in that fear of rejection, but then we have these beautiful bi-monthly gatherings where we meet together and we learn about each other and we explore with each other and we really honor ourselves. We don't get performative, we don't get fantastical. We just really stay in the present moment as facilitated by me and my co-creator, Julia. So that presence, that state of presence that Julie and I have, that we bring to the container, and the agreements that we have, really keep us in integrity, keep us in connection together. And then we also have, we usually use Slack. We use Slack, which is a messaging app. And we also share our practices with each other. We share our desires with each other daily if we want. We share our fears. We restore integrity together. We normalize the practice of being accountable and restoring integrity. We normalize sharing sensations and dreams and stories of experiences in the world. And that sharing allows us to really start to, again, our nervous systems to start to normalize the experience of being human and all the realms and the territories that brings us. So we see our peers doing that. We see ourselves doing that. Nobody's abandoning anybody. Everyone's staying present with in the intimacy that we're creating. And again, that direct experience, there's nothing conceptual about that. That direct experience really starts to inform the nervous system. It starts to, on its own, it starts to break down preconceived notions about ourselves, about others. It starts to, on its own, start to dissolve trauma patternings, because the learning is happening in real time. It's not some concept that we're studying. We're not studying a theory. We're living a change. We're living a new thought technology. We're living a way of being in relationship with each other and camaraderie with each other that's so exquisite and so rare. And, it's not always easy. I do want to name that. It's not always easy because intimacy, is we have a lot of shame, as human beings. So our shame a lot of times will come up first, like, oh, I can't really show them this side, or I don't really want them to see that. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I'm going to share a little bit and see what happens, right? And then as we do that, it just builds, and it just builds in this beautiful way. The more transparent we are, how interesting it is, the stronger our nervous systems get, and the more resilient our nervous systems get, and the more deeper and wider our nervous systems get. Our whole being starts to develop this agency and resourcing, and all of a sudden we can interact in the world and with ourselves in a new way. So I hope hope that that gets a little bit at that question, why communities of practice are so important. If you have any questions about if your community of practice has integrity, or if your community of practice isn't going so well, what might they engage with to help strengthen that community of practice, please let me know. If you want to know more about my Matrix Integration Exploration 2022, please let me know about that. That starts at the end of February. And I would love for us to lean into this beautiful invitation to know that we are not trudging through this planet as individuals. We are dancing through this lifetime in mysterious ways, but also in really tangible ways that create safety for our nervous systems. And nervous systems love simpleness and the right here and now, just the right here and now. So our nervous systems learn that through experience and that exploration. So, all right, bye for now. I'm glad that I got to do this and that Paul got to be here with it as well.